You're watching Raptors Today. I'm Savanna Hamilton alongside Paul Jones and Sherman Hamilton. Special episode today. We're talking about Black History Month, and I just want to dive right in because we will have a lot to say. I already know that, guys. Sherm, let's start with the most asked question of this month. Why is Black history important to you?
Well, because I think Black history impacts all histories across the world. And I think it's something that has been, swept under the rug for way too long. And even in recent history, we've had more of an emphasis on Black History Month. Well, the month is not where it should end. It should be a constant learning process for all of us about Black history. We spent a lot of our lives learning about everybody else's history. We're inundated with information about other cultures, other races. They need to know about our history. They need to know about our culture, our races, and everything that goes along with it. And I think that, to me, the significance of that is not just for you and I who are in the now. It's for the future generations that find that platform and find that confidence and have the ability to be proud of who they are and understand that they matter and they're a significant part of this world and they need to be heard all over the world. So I just think that we've got to, as a society, understand the value of Black people in general and not just try to condense it into a month and try to spread it out over the course of the year, because we deserve more than that. Trust me.
Sherm, great points. And Savanna, I've recently reverted to using the hashtag that started this month, but as Sherm said, hashtag Black History Always. We have learned about all of the history leading to where we are now. And a lot of it, the Black culture is marginalized, seen as subservient, made to feel inferior, when in fact, it is important to celebrate Black achievement, Black excellence, and the hard work, just like everybody else's hard work that goes into it. And I brought you this, both of you guys, and the experience, before we even got on the air. When I was a principal in the school, we talked about the curriculum. I love seeing projects by kids on inventors and what they've brought to our world. But there are things that have been brought to our world by Black people that are not in the curriculum. And in trying to get, my teachers to, do we know that it was a Black woman that was the basis for the GPS that we use? Do we know those kinds of things? Do we know that it was a Dr. Charles Drew that separated blood from plasma for blood transfusions? Do we know these things? No, we don't. And those are the kinds of things, as Sherman was saying, those are rich parts of our history. And we should be proud of that Black achievement and that Black excellence and what it's done in society. And we need to celebrate that. We need to celebrate that. It can't be marginalized.
Absolutely. And just quickly to Jonesy's point, listen, I'm a kid that grew up in Canada and I went away to school in the States for my collegiate career. And I was sick into my stomach to understand that I learned in a US school that the Underground Railroad went through Canada. Not once in my education in Canada was I ever told about the Underground Railroad or anything about Black people. This is why Black history matters. I don't want future generations experiencing that kind of embarrassment.
Absolutely. And when I was in middle school, they were teaching me some different type of history, and I brought it back home. And let me tell you, my Jamaican father sent me France. Okay, none of that. He was like, I need to let you learn something today. So he did teach me about, the Underground Railroad in Canada itself as well. Now, Sherm, kind of going back to you, we've seen front office leadership. We've seen Black leaders in those spaces in the Toronto Raptors organization. And, how do you think that trickles down to the players that we see being very vocal and speaking out on the court?
Well, there's a connectivity there when you talk about, having a Black president in Masai Ujiri, who understands that, where he's coming from, everything is not the way that it's perceived to be, because you're coming from Africa. There's a different life there. There's an understanding of what Africa means in terms of society in general. Coming to North America, that's not necessarily the messaging. So having to kind of create an environment where, minorities understand that they have an opportunity is something that he's in a position to be able to create. And that's something that in the Black community, we've craved for, to have our own in positions of decision that can really put people in better situations. And he's been able to do that both with minorities and with women. He's done a great job of uplifting, people that have been marginalized. So having that element there, John Wiggins, who's now leader of inclusion and, diversity and things of that nature. It's great to see another Black person be at the head of something that's really going to hopefully change a lot of minds and the way processes are done. And Courtney Charles, now the GM of the 905, another Black man who was in a position of leadership when he was with the Raptors organization in their front office. So there's something to be said about having Black people or people of color in positions that can make decisions that can help those coming up from behind, because we know how it is. The struggle in terms of getting ahead and making those strides, knowing that you're qualified and you just might not get the opportunity based on the color of your skin, is a very, very hard thing to deal with. And hopefully that changes and continues to change as this organization continues to lead the way.
Absolutely. And, it has that trickle down effect that we saw in the bubble. The Raptors really put their stick in the ground. They're like, no, we're even showing up to the bubble, making a statement. So Jonesy, you've been around the game and you've seen a lot of, different teams and players. How impressed were you when the Raptors really showed leadership from a player level?
Well, Savanna, I can't tell you how impressed, how proud I was. Look, I'll say this to you, and all of you younger than me on this call, including our producer behind the scenes, Jake LaRue. I came from a generation where you didn't speak up. You held your tongue, and people spoke up for you. Jim Brown, Muhammad Ali, Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, they spoke up for you. And now we're at a time, and we're almost 60 years later, that, you know what? It's good to see that I'm on TV with another Black man, with Sherman Hamilton. It's good that I see Savanna Hamilton on TV. It's good that, and the Raptors have been doing this. They started this from their history. The first broadcast director, producer director of the Raptors broadcast was a Black man. So Brian Sheriff. So it's good to see the younger generation using their voice, because I'm just kind of finding my voice now because it had been muted for so long. And it's good to see the players saying, wait a minute, we make up a majority of this league. It's entertainment, but as part of the entertainment, we want things done. We want changes made to help us. We're going to be out of this entertainment cycle in a bit, and there will be new people coming in. We're trying to make it better. And listen, make no mistake, Joe Biden is the 46th president of the United States with a South Asian / Jamaican Black woman as his vice president. History making. They're about change. And a lot of that change happened because of a lot of the things that NBA players did in mobilizing previously marginalized communities to vote for him. So I'm looking for some change there. It's long, it's slow, it's a difficult arc, but it seems like we're on the right track, and NBA players continue to advocate for change, continue to use their voice and their platform, and good for them. And I'm really, as an older guy, I'm really proud of the younger generation, the way they're using their voice.
Now, producer and Black leader behind the scenes, honestly, Dwayne Watson, produced a feature on you, Jonesy, that I'm looking forward to watching. So let's check it out now.
My name's Paul Jones. I am proud to say that I've been associated with the Raptor broadcast, radio, and TV since day one of the franchise. I'm also proud to say I'm a Jamaican-born Canadian involved in basketball, where it seems to be dominated by a lot of our brothers from the South. Being at one time the only Black radio play-by-play man in the NBA. And even now, I'm still part-time, but there aren't many of us. So I'm proud of that. I'm proud of being able to show some longevity, continue to work, show that I lasted all of this time. These chairs can be musical chairs at times, and you get moved out of them and moved into other chairs. But, my work ethic and my ability and my passion for the game has kept me in the chair that I am now. And I'm hoping, again, that I'm an example for other younger Black broadcasters who aspire to that and say, you know what, I can do that too. And it's just a matter, to me, of getting an opportunity. Somebody saying, you know what, that person's worthy. They've worked hard. They know the game. They understand everything around it. As a kid growing up, watching the civil rights movement take place in the 60s, as I sat on the living room floor in my parents' house, we're still asking the same questions. Here we are 60 years later, and there's still questions being asked about equity, inclusivity. You know, I know there are people that'll hear some of these things and they'll roll their eyes and they say, oh man, here we go again. Well, if you're rolling your eyes and saying, here we go again with asking for change, imagine what it's like when you're that person sitting there wanting the change and looking for the change and doing everything you can from an educational, a legal, every other standpoint to try and make change, and change doesn't come. If you're tired of listening to it, there are some people that are tired of living it. So, you know, what's next? Continue to push for change. Continue to move the ball down the field in terms of equity, inclusivity. Just keep making sure that that is at the forefront. To me, it's just about, again, continuing to level the playing field, continue to give opportunities, continue to make the workforce, the world in general, look more equitable and inclusive.
Furthering the conversation, we're going to head to RTX. Joining us on RTX today, we got Charles Kissi in the building, GM and head coach of the Guelph Nighthawks. He's also one of the owners of Equity Connections, which is a group that focuses on inclusion, transformative leadership within organizations. So thanks, Kissi, for joining us. New to RTX, we got Jevohn Shepherd, a former professional basketball player, and sounds like he's a bit of a rival with Charles Kissi here. Jevohn, what's up with that?
He's stealing all the players.
We're just going to beat them. That's it. We're just here to beat them. Kissi's a great guy, but when it comes to that court, it's gonna be some good competition.
All right, okay, let's dive right in. Now, Masai Ujiri has been such a great leader for the Toronto Raptors, a strong voice, but you know, he truly is an anomaly when it comes to front office leadership, you know, just by nature of who he is. But why, you know, Charles, start us off, why is it so important to have representation in positions like his across the league?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing is, you know, and I've said this many times before, is that, you know, it was so important for Masai to be able to speak out. But more importantly, it was important for him to give people the voice and an opportunity to share and speak out. But listen, you're talking about an NBA league with 83% of their players being Black men. You know, three or almost four of the 30 owners are people of color, so not very many. He is one of 11% of the CEOs and president in the league. So there's not very many people of color as in those higher up positions. I think there's only 10 GMs of color in the league. So, I mean, the higher you go, the less you see it. And so the representation becomes really important, because at the bottom of that, where all the players lie, you know, their voices need to be magnified, and Masai is doing a great job in leading that charge.
I agree with Charles. You know, like you said, Charles, 83% of the league is, you know, people of color, black athletes, and I think, you know, that position is so important because you have to be able to relate to the players. And you know, the NBA and most of these leagues have always been one to protect their investment. Now, how do you protect your investment if you can't understand or relate to the players that are playing the game and out there, right? So that those governing bodies need to be diverse in order for, you know, them to have to speak for those athletes and just and be in unison, rather.
Absolutely. And you know, it's been 6 months since we saw our athletes, for at least the Toronto Raptors, really take the lead in the bubble. You know, and they're still taking leads, of course, but you know, the bubble has been now like half a year ago. You know, what changes have you seen, Jevohn, that from the players, from the teams in this league since then?
Now they're at a point where the players understand their value, they understand their brand, and they understand that they can't be silenced. So with that, they're now using the platforms that they do have to make change, to take initiative, and just speak on the volatile injustice that we've experienced over the last, or we've seen over the last couple of, or 400 years rather, but more importantly, of our generation that's been at the forefront while the world has been at a standstill with COVID. So I think, they're using that platform now. They're speaking for their grandparents. They're speaking for their brothers, their fathers, their sisters, and so forth. And that message has to continue. I think, where the NBA is concerned, what they're going to do is great to have, the messages that Black Lives Matter and, all the messages on support. And the NBA has always been forward thinking, but what are you going to do for the next 400 years? What are those hires going to look like? What's the front of the benches? What are the front offices going to look like? What are the broadcasters going to look like? Are they going to speak the language of the players? Are they going to look like the players? Because like you said, with 83% of the league being Black, there's a big disparity between the two.
Yeah, and absolutely. And let me also shout out the WNBA for making a major push, right, and having a huge role in the movement. I think that's well documented, but sometimes understated. They've had a tremendous impact on the movement. The other piece, though, is the players are actually educating themselves. So I think that's probably one of the most crucial pieces in all of this is the education portion. And that, we know, Jevohn could speak to this as Black men, what your experience is, but sometimes contextualizing it is hard. Sometimes understanding what it is, where it comes from, why you're in these situations, whether it's the police or school. In my podcast, I talk a lot about not just the police issue, but our education system has problems. Jevohn alluded to the representation in the media and so on and so forth. And so it's important that we're looking at it broadly and that we're understanding and educating ourselves. And I think that's one of the things the players have done a really good job of in this movement.
Shout out to the WNBA, you mentioned it, and they have been very much social leaders and vocal leaders. And I really do feel like, and it has been acknowledged by other NBA players that, they've really started it and the NBA has really carried that momentum. And of course, the NBA's platform, naturally, people are listening and, change has been made that we've seen this past year. We saw NBA arenas be opened up as voting centers. We've seen players say, hey guys, out on their platform, go vote, go vote. This is the most vote frenzy I've seen in a long time. So, going back to you, Charles, though, you, like I mentioned off the top of the show, you have a business that's kind of dedicated to creating these types of changes. But what noticeable changes have you seen over the past year within organizations to bring down systemic or systematic racism?
I think the first thing has been acknowledgement. I think if you look at what Masai's done, is he's called out his own organization, right? And so I think there are people like Masai doing that. I think, and starting to educate. I think people are understanding there is a need to understand what the issues actually are. I think the other piece is people we're hiring. If you look at John Wiggins, VP of Organizational Change and Culture for the Raptors, now focused with a very specific lens on those issues. And I think you're seeing that throughout the NBA, and it's going to have a ripple effect. I mean, I think ultimately, it's a put your money where your mouth is. It's one thing, as Jevohn alluded to talk about it and say all the right things, but now it's time to put your money where your mouth is and make sure you're creating these inclusive environments. It's not that, the league needs to be all Black. I don't think anybody's saying that. I think it's like about the opportunities that some are getting and not getting, and making sure that there's an equitable balance there.
And like you said, Charles, 83% of the athletes are Black, people of color, and then you have the 11% in higher up in front office. There's a big gap. There's still room for progress. There's still room for change. And I think, you need to continue to see that. And the NBA has to continue to be forward thinking in how they're going to approach this and just continue to set that precedent, because most importantly, it's about inspiring. And when the kids see Masai, when the kids see a Mark Eversley in a GM position in Chicago, when they see Doc Rivers at the head of the benches of the respective lane, they allow those kids to inspire. They allow those kids to dream that you can be more than just the athlete that's running and dunking and getting the crowd involved, or the athlete that's the wide receiver that's catching and getting a touchdown. You can actually be in a position of management, and I think that has to be paramount, and that has to be what these organizations are going to do for the next 400 years. And so on.
As I keep listening to you guys talk all day about this subject, one of my favorite subjects to talk about, change and growing the game, through diversity. but we do have to wrap it up. Thank you guys. It's been a pleasure talking to you. So, on the lines of this conversation now, Sherm and Jonesy, you guys are both fathers. And Sherm, what type of world do you wish to see your kids graduate into as they grow up and step into their careers?
Well, I have two beautiful daughters, and one of the things I've always wanted for them was the opportunity to have that level playing field, to have the ability to walk in any situation confidently, knowing that if they put the work in, they have just as much of a chance as anybody else at getting whatever they achieve or they want to achieve in life. And that has been difficult for generations before me to be able to have that confidence that their children will be able to have that. And that's why I'm in this fight. I understand that I have two girls, but there are a lot of kids that look like my girls out there, both boys and girls, that need that opportunity. And I'm very fortunate to be in the position I'm in terms of having a platform, being in front of the camera, and people visibly being able to see that I'm a Black man on TV. And I don't take that lightly, but I got to understand that comes with responsibility. And I have to be very, very accountable when it comes to setting a good example from that perspective. And it starts with my own kids. So there's no question. It's an uphill battle, but we're made to fight. We're made to deal with this stuff. We're made to grind it out, and we're not going to stop. And to me, that future is very attainable for my kids and many other Black kids around this world.
Well said, Sherm. Look, one of the books that I'm reading by Dr. Ibrahim Kendi on how to be an anti-racist, and it's not necessarily for me. It's for other people that I can help them achieve that. And I've been trying to help my three kids achieve that. Two of them are, they're of adult age now. They can vote, they can drive, they can drink. And we've had many conversations about this, and they are part of this new liberated younger generation that are using their voice and just going by, the phrase, if you see something, say something. And that's where they're at right now. And I want the same thing as Sherm for everybody, not to be marginalized, to have an opportunity, be able to put the work in, and then achieve excellence, achieve success, and have that, come to the forefront. So it's something that we're all fighting for, and it's a together thing. Everybody needs to fight for it. Yes, we're leading the charge, but we need everybody in on the fight, Savanna.
Thank you guys so much for having this conversation with me and being open and vulnerable. It's a conversation that we need to have, not just in Black History Month, but every day. And thank you guys, the viewers, for watching Raptors Today.